Ambassador Vel stood before the great window of Coalition Station Prime, watching the stars burn in the endless dark. Once, those stars had meant hope. Now they meant death. The Hollow were coming and nothing could stop them. The war had lasted 3 years. 3 years of running. 3 years of watching entire worlds go silent. The Hollow moved like a disease across the galaxy, eating everything in their path. They were insects, but not like the small, harmless bugs on peaceful worlds. These were monsters. Each one stood taller than 2 men. Their shells were black as space itself. Their claws could cut through metal like paper. And there were billions of them. 47 planets had fallen. 47 worlds filled with families, children, and dreams. All gone. All consumed by the endless hunger of the Hollow. Vel pressed his thin blue fingers against the cold glass. His species, the Myra, were not warriors. They were diplomats, thinkers, and builders of peace. But peace meant nothing to creatures that only knew how to destroy. The Coalition Council had tried everything. They had sent their greatest fleets. They had built new weapons. They had formed alliances with every known species in the galaxy. None of it mattered. The Hollow simply had too many soldiers. For every one that fell, 10 more took its place. There was only one option left. One terrible, desperate option that made Vel's hearts beat faster with fear. Earth. He had studied the reports. Every species in the Coalition had. Earth was listed in the galactic records as a Category 7 death world. The classification system only went up to 7. It was a planet so dangerous, so hostile, so utterly insane that most Coalition species could not survive a single rotation on its surface. The gravity alone would crush weaker beings. Earth pulled at everything with a force that made bones break and muscles tear. The atmosphere was filled with oxygen, a highly reactive gas that most species considered toxic. The weather changed constantly, from freezing storms to burning heat. The oceans covered most of the planet and were filled with acid that could eat through skin. But the worst part was the life. Earth was not a quiet world. It was a battlefield where every living thing fought to survive every single day. The animals there had evolved claws, teeth, venom, and speed beyond imagination. Creatures hunted each other without mercy. Plants grew thorns and poison to protect themselves. Even the smallest insects could kill. And somehow, impossibly, one species had risen above all of it. They called themselves humans. Vel had watched the classified recordings. He had seen humans running across their world for hours without stopping. He had seen them swimming in those acid oceans like it was nothing. He had watched them eat capsaicin, a chemical so dangerous it was used as a weapon on other worlds, and they ate it for fun. They called it spicy food. They healed from wounds that would kill any Coalition species. They survived diseases that should have ended them. They lived in every environment their death world offered, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. They adapted. They endured. They refused to die. The thought of asking these creatures for help made Vel feel sick with fear. But what choice did he have? He walked slowly to the council chamber. The great room was filled with representatives from 100 different species. Some floated in liquid tanks. Others perched on special branches. A few stood on legs that numbered from 2 to 12. All of them looked tired. All of them looked afraid. Vel took his place at the speaking platform. His voice shook as he began. "Fellow members of the Coalition," he said, "I come before you with a proposal. I know it will frighten you. It frightens me too, but we have no other choice." The room went silent. Every eye, every sensor, every antenna turned toward him. "I propose that we contact Earth," Vel said. "I propose that we ask the humans for help." The reaction was immediate. Screams of protest filled the chamber. Representatives from peaceful worlds fainted. A delegate from the soft ones actually dissolved into a puddle of fear. "You cannot be serious," Commander Oren shouted from his seat. The old warrior had fought the Hollow for 2 years. He had lost half his fleet. His gray feathers were thin, and his eyes were haunted. The humans are monsters. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every moment of their existence. They are predators of the highest order. Bringing them here would be like inviting a disease into our home. The Hollow are already the disease, Vel replied quietly. The humans might be the cure. They eat other living creatures, another delegate cried. They consume flesh. So do the Hollow, Vel said. The humans fight wars against each other, someone else shouted. They have weapons that can destroy entire cities. And perhaps those weapons can destroy the Hollow. The arguing continued for hours. Vel stood silent through most of it, letting the fear wash over the room. He understood. He felt the same fear, but fear of the humans was nothing compared to the certain death the Hollow promised. Finally, Scientist Pella stood. She was small, with large eyes and delicate hands built for careful work. She had spent 10 years studying Earth from a safe distance. She knew more about that death world than anyone else in the Coalition. I have reviewed the data, she said softly. The humans are indeed terrifying. Everything you have said about them is true. They are predators. They are violent. They are born from a world of endless death. The room grew quiet, waiting for her conclusion. But, she continued, they are also something else, something we have not considered. They form bonds. They protect their families. They have a concept they call loyalty. They will fight to the death for those they consider friends. She paused, her large eyes blinking slowly. If we can make them our friends, she said, they will fight for us with every terrible gift their death world gave them. And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. The vote was close, so close that Vel thought his heart would stop from the tension. But in the end, desperation won over fear. The message was sent to Earth that very night. It was simple and direct. We are dying, we need help. Will you come? The humans responded in less than 6 hours. Their message was even simpler. We're on our way. Vel read those 4 words over and over, such a short response. No questions about payment, no demands for territory, no negotiations. Just a promise. He did not know if he should feel relieved or more afraid than ever. Commander Oren stood beside him, reading the same message. The old warrior's feathers had gone pale. What have we done? He whispered. Vel had no answer. He could only watch the stars and wait for the death world's children to arrive. Somewhere out there, crossing the vast emptiness of space, the humans were coming. And the galaxy would never be the same. The ship appeared without warning. One moment the sensors showed empty space. The next moment there it was. Coalition Station 12 had been chosen as the meeting point because it was far from any important worlds. If the humans proved dangerous, the damage would be limited. Commander Oren stood in the observation deck, watching the Earth vessel approach. It was smaller than he expected. Much smaller. Coalition warships were massive things, built to carry thousands of soldiers and hundreds of weapons. This human ship looked like it could fit inside his command bridge. That cannot be their warship, he said to Ambassador Vel, who stood nervously beside him. It must be a transport, a scout vessel. The humans said they were sending their response unit, Vel replied, checking his translation device for the 10th time. Perhaps this is how they travel. Response unit, Oren repeated. The words felt strange. How many soldiers does a response unit contain? Before Vel could answer, the human ship docked. The station systems automatically began preparing the biocontainment area. Special suits were laid out. Air filters were activated. Medical teams stood ready with every known treatment for toxic exposure. The airlock opened. 5 humans walked out. Oren blinked his 4 eyes. Then he blinked again. He counted once more, certain he had made a mistake. 5, there were only 5 of them. They wore simple clothing, dark fabric that covered their bodies but left their heads exposed. No helmets, no environmental suits, no breathing masks. They simply walked into the station air and breathed it like it was nothing. The leader stepped forward. He was average height for a human with black hair cut short and dark eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His face showed no expression, no fear, no excitement, just calm observation. "I am Captain Park June," he said. His voice was steady and quiet. "Earth Response Unit 7, we received your distress call." Vel stepped forward, trying to hide his trembling. "Welcome, Captain. I am Ambassador Vel. We are grateful you came. But I must ask, where is the rest of your force?" June looked at him, just looked. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. "This is our force," he said simply. Oren made a sound of disbelief. "5 soldiers. You came to fight the Hollow with 5 soldiers. The Hollow have conquered 47 worlds. They have armies numbering in the billions. And you bring 5. The human beside June laughed. He was larger than the others, with thick arms and a wide chest. His face wore a constant smile that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "5 is usually more than enough," he said. "I'm Sergeant Kim T, by the way, heavy weapons." Oren stared at him. "More than enough for billions of enemies." "We'll manage." A female human stepped forward. She was smaller than the others, with kind eyes and gentle movements. She carried a bag marked with a strange symbol. "I am Lieutenant Yoon Hana," she said, "medical officer and field biologist. I noticed one of your crew members appears injured." She pointed to a coalition worker near the back of the room. "May I examine them?" Before anyone could respond, she was already moving. The injured worker, a member of the shell species, tried to back away. Hana was faster. She knelt beside him and began examining his cracked shell with careful hands. "This fracture happened at least 3 days ago," she said. "Why hasn't it been treated?" "Our medical supplies are limited," Vel admitted. "The war has made everything scarce." Hana made a soft sound of disapproval. She reached into her bag and pulled out tools and materials that no one recognized. Within minutes, she had sealed the crack with some kind of hardening liquid. The shell worker touched his repaired shell with wonder. "The pain," he whispered, "it's gone." Hana smiled warmly and patted his arm. "You'll be fine now. Just rest for a few days." Oren watched this exchange with confusion. The human had shown kindness, genuine kindness. This was not what the reports had described. Then he noticed the youngest human picking through a box of station food supplies. "Private Cho D," Captain June said without turning around. "Stop eating their food." The young man froze with something wet and slimy halfway to his mouth. It was a preserved creature from the ocean world of Talais. It was meant to be cooked before eating. It was, by coalition standards, completely raw. "It's fine," Cho D said, then bit into it anyway. The sound of crunching shell filled the room. Several coalition members turned away, looking sick. The last human had been quiet until now. She sat in the corner, eyes closed, fingers moving rapidly over a small device. She was thin, with sharp features and an intensity that radiated from her even while still. "Specialist Beak Sara," June said, noticing Oren's gaze. "Communications and technology. She's learning your language systems." "Learning?" Vel asked. "She has had access for perhaps 10 minutes." Sara opened her eyes. 17 minutes, she corrected. "Your primary language has 42 base phonemes and a relatively simple grammatical structure. Your secondary encryption protocols use a rotating 7-layer system that changes every standard hour." She tilted her head. "Also, your station's defense grid has a vulnerability in Sector 7. You should fix that." The coalition technician nearby made a choking sound. "That encryption took our best minds 20 years to develop." Sora shrugged. "It's very clever, just not clever enough." Captain June stepped forward again. "Ambassador Vel, we did not come here to impress you or frighten you. We came because you asked for help. Please tell us about the enemy." Vel led them to the briefing room. Along the way, Oren watched the humans move. They walked with a strange efficiency, their bodies balanced and ready at all times. When Sergeant Kim T passed a stack of supply crates, he casually adjusted one that had been placed unevenly. The crate weighed 300 standard units. He moved it with one hand. In the briefing room, Vel displayed maps and battle reports. He showed them images of hollow soldiers, the massive insectoid creatures that had become the nightmare of every coalition world. He explained their hive structure, their psychic link to their queens, their endless hunger. The humans watched silently, no gasps of fear, no sounds of shock, just focused attention. They have taken 47 worlds, Vel concluded. Our military estimates suggest we would need a force of 10 million soldiers and at least 6 months to reclaim even one of those worlds, and we would lose 80% of that force in the process. Captain June studied the map. His dark eyes moved from planet to planet, calculating something that no one else could see. "Which world is closest?" he asked. "Chorus Prime. It fell 3 months ago. The Hollow have heavily fortified it. Our scouts estimate they have at least 2 million soldiers stationed there." June nodded slowly. "We'll start there." Oren stepped forward. "Start there. With 5 soldiers against 2 million. Captain, I have commanded fleets in this war. I have watched good soldiers die by the thousands against these monsters. What you are suggesting is not bravery. It is suicide." June finally looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, Oren saw something in those human eyes, something ancient and cold and patient. "Commander," June said softly, "my species evolved on a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill us. We survived ice ages that froze most of our planet. We survived asteroid impacts that blacked out our sky. We survived predators with teeth longer than your arm and diseases that killed billions of us." He paused. "We're still here. The ice ages aren't. The asteroids aren't. The predators aren't." His voice dropped even lower. "Everything that tried to kill humanity is either dead or wishes it was." The room went very quiet. "Give us 1 week," June said. 1 week on Chorus Prime, then decide if you need more soldiers." Oren wanted to argue. Every tactical instinct he had screamed that this was madness. But something in the human's voice stopped him. Something that spoke of certainties beyond normal understanding. 1 week, Oren agreed. "And may whatever gods exist have mercy on the Hollow, because I suspect you will not." For the first time, Captain Park June smiled. It was small and brief, and somehow more frightening than any threat could have been. "No," he said, "we will not." The transport ship descended through Chorus Prime's atmosphere in complete darkness. Captain June had requested a night drop. The Coalition pilots thought he was insane. Night was when the Hollow were most active. Their compound eyes saw perfectly in low light. Their hunting instincts sharpened when the sun went down. The humans dropped anyway. Scientist Pella watched from the observation deck of Commander Oren's flagship. She had requested permission to monitor the mission for research purposes. Now she sat surrounded by screens and sensors, tracking every piece of data she could gather about the 5 humans on the planet below. The transport touched down in a swamp region far from any Hollow outposts. The door opened, and the 5 humans stepped out into an environment that should have killed them instantly. Chorus Prime had once been a beautiful world, green forests and clean rivers. Now the Hollow had transformed it into something twisted. The air was thick with toxic spores from fungal growths the Hollow had brought from their homeworld. The water was contaminated with organic waste. The ground itself had become soft and treacherous, filled with sinkholes and acidic pools. The humans breathed the air without masks. Pella's instruments detected the toxic spores entering their lungs. She waited for them to collapse. They did not collapse, they just kept walking. "Their immune systems," she whispered to herself, recording notes. "They must be fighting off the toxins in real time. Incredible." For the first 6 hours, the humans moved in complete silence. They communicated with hand signals and brief glances. Pella's audio sensors picked up nothing but the sounds of the swamp. It was as if the humans had simply vanished into the environment. Then the first Holo patrol found them. Or rather, the humans found the patrol. Pella had not even seen the humans move. One moment, the 5 Holo soldiers were walking through the swamp in their standard formation. The next moment, Sergeant Kim T emerged from the water directly behind them. He had been underwater. For how long, Pella could not calculate. Her records showed no sign of breathing equipment. He had simply held his breath and waited. The fight lasted 11 seconds. Kim T did not use his weapons. He used his hands. His fists struck with force that Pella's sensors registered as impossible for organic muscle. The hollow shells, which could resist standard plasma fire, cracked and shattered under his blows. When it was over, 5 Holo soldiers lay broken in the water. Kim T was not even breathing hard. He made a hand signal to the others. They emerged from hiding places Pella had not detected and continued moving. Over the next 3 days, this pattern repeated. The humans never stopped. They never slept. They moved through the most hostile terrain on the planet like ghosts, leaving trails of dead Holo behind them. Pella documented everything. She watched Private Cho D run down a fleeing Holo scout. The young human covered 12 kilometers in less than 30 minutes, sprinting at speeds that should have exhausted any creature with their body structure. When he caught the scout, he was barely winded. Persistence hunting, Pella recorded. The ancient human predation method. They did not evolve to be the fastest creatures on their world. They evolved to never stop. They would chase prey until the prey's heart simply gave out from exhaustion. The prey never escaped because the humans never stopped following. She watched Lieutenant Yoon Hana analyze the Holo's biology in the field. The medic collected samples from dead enemies, studying their chemical composition and physical structure with terrifying efficiency. Within 2 days, she had identified 3 weaknesses in the Holo physiology that Coalition scientists had missed in 3 years of war. She watched Specialist Beak Sora tap into the Holo's communication network. The insects used a combination of chemical signals and low-frequency vibrations to coordinate. Sora decoded their entire system in one night. She began feeding them false information, sending patrols into ambushes and creating confusion throughout the hive. But most of all, Pella watched Captain Park Jun. The human leader moved like a shadow. He was everywhere and nowhere. He planned each attack with precision that bordered on prescience. When they encountered a Holo fortress, he studied it for exactly 17 minutes, then led his team through a route that avoided every sensor, every patrol, and every trap. On the 3rd day, they reached the outer defenses of the Queen's territory. Commander Oren contacted Pella on a secure channel. Any signs they will retreat. Request extraction. Negative, Pella replied. They are pressing forward. Their supplies must be running low. They cannot sustain this pace indefinitely. Pella reviewed her data. Commander, they have not used any supplies. They have been drinking the contaminated water and eating local vegetation, including some plants that are mildly poisonous to most species. There was a long silence on the other end. They are eating the poison plants. Yes, it appears their bodies can process low-level toxins. They seem to consider it unremarkable. Another long silence. What have we unleashed? Oren whispered. Pella did not answer because she did not know. On the planet below, Captain Jun gathered his team in a rocky outcrop overlooking the Queen's fortress. It was massive, a twisted structure of organic material and stolen technology. Millions of Holo soldiers swarmed around it like insects around a hive, which, Pella reminded herself, was exactly what they were. The Queen is in the central chamber, Sora reported. I've mapped the interior from their communication signals. There are approximately 50,000 soldiers inside the fortress itself, with another 2 million in the surrounding territory. Weaknesses? June asked. Hana pulled out her notes. Their exoskeletons have a structural vulnerability at the joints. A blade at the right angle will cut through. Also, their compound eyes are sensitive to certain light frequencies. A bright flash will blind them for approximately 4 seconds. Their psychic link to the Queen has a range of about 300 kilometers, Sora added. If the Queen dies, every hollow within that range will experience severe disorientation. The further ones will lose coordination but remain functional. Kim T grinned. So we kill the Queen and half of them fall down. Approximately, Hana confirmed. Cho D was bouncing on his feet, eager and restless. When do we go in? June studied the fortress for a long moment. Then he turned to his team. Tonight, full assault. We move fast and quiet until we reach the inner chamber. Then we move fast and loud. Just the 5 of us against 50,000, Kim T asked, but he was still grinning. He knew the answer. The 5 of us, June confirmed. Anyone have a problem with those odds? No one did. As darkness fell over Chorus Prime, the 5 humans began their approach. Pella watched them disappear into the shadow of the alien fortress, swallowed up by the night and the waiting enemy millions. She thought about everything she had learned about these creatures, their endurance, their adaptability, their impossible tolerance for pain and poison and pressure, their relentless, patient, unstoppable nature. The Hollow had conquered 47 worlds. They had killed billions of beings. They had never faced anything they could not overwhelm with numbers and ferocity. Tonight they would face Earth's children. Pella found herself doing something she had not done since the war began. Something that felt strange and unfamiliar after so many years of despair. She hoped for the monsters from the Death World. She hoped they would do what no one else could do. She hoped they would win. Because if they could not, nothing could. The fortress swallowed the humans whole. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, deep inside the structure, the screaming began. And it did not stop for a very long time. The battle would later be called the 17-hour war. Those who survived it would speak of it in whispers. Those who watched from orbit would have nightmares for years. It began with fire. Sergeant Kim T had brought a weapon from Earth. He called it a flamethrower. The Coalition had no direct translation for this word. They had to invent one. It meant, roughly, device that throws controlled plasma fire. The first wave of Hollow soldiers met this fire in the entrance tunnel. They had expected easy prey. 5 soft creatures with no shells, no claws, no venom. They found instead a wall of burning death. Kim T walked forward as he fired. The flames roared from his weapon like the breath of some ancient dragon from Earth mythology. The Hollow burned. Their organic shells, evolved to resist energy weapons, were not designed for sustained high-temperature attack. They cracked. They melted. They turned to ash. Behind him, the other humans moved with practiced efficiency. Private Cho D was the fastest. He darted through gaps in the enemy lines, his blade flashing in the firelight. He struck at the joints, just as Lieutenant Hana had instructed. Every cut was precise. Every movement was calculated. He killed 12 Hollow soldiers in the time it took most creatures to draw a single breath. Specialist Beak Sora had modified her communication device into a weapon. She broadcast signals on the Hollow frequency, feeding them false commands. Turn left when they should turn right. Stop when they should attack. The confusion spread through their ranks like a disease. Lieutenant Yoon Hana carried a weapon she had built from spare parts during their journey. It produced sound waves at frequencies that caused the Hollow's compound eyes to vibrate painfully. When she activated it, entire squads of enemy soldiers stumbled and fell, clutching their heads in agony. And at the front of it all was Captain Park Jun. He moved like water flowing downhill, smooth and unstoppable. He had chosen to fight with a blade rather than firearms. Scientist Pella, watching from orbit, could not understand why until she saw how he used it. The blade was an extension of his body. It cut through hollow shells that should have been impenetrable. It deflected attacks that should have been impossible to see. June did not fight like a soldier. He fought like something else entirely. Something older. Something that remembered when humans hunted with sharpened stones and survived by being more dangerous than the things that hunted them. The hours passed. The humans pressed deeper into the fortress. They did not rest. They did not slow. When one of them was injured, they kept moving. Pella watched Cho Di take a claw strike across his arm that would have crippled most species. He wrapped it with a strip of cloth and continued fighting. Adrenaline, Pella recorded, her voice shaking. The human body produces chemical compounds under stress that allow it to ignore pain and continue functioning. They are fighting through wounds that should stop them. Their bodies simply refuse to acknowledge damage. By the 10th hour, the team reached the inner chambers. 20,000 hollow soldiers had fallen. The corridors were choked with bodies, and still the humans came. The Queen knew they were coming. She had felt every death through her psychic link. She had tried to overwhelm them with numbers. She had sent her best warriors. She had ordered her soldiers to sacrifice themselves in waves. Nothing worked. She sent a message through her network, calling for reinforcements from every corner of the planet. 2 million soldiers began converging on the fortress. It would take time, but eventually they would crush these invaders through sheer weight of numbers. She did not have time. Captain June reached the Queen's chamber after 17 hours of continuous combat. His uniform was torn. His body was covered in wounds that ranged from shallow cuts to a deep gash across his chest. A hollow blade had gone completely through his left shoulder. He was still standing. The Queen was massive, 3 times the size of her soldiers. Her shell was reinforced with layers of organic armor. Her claws could cut through ship hulls. Her psychic power had broken the minds of coalition officers from kilometers away. She looked at the small human standing in her doorway, and for the first time in her existence, she felt something cold creeping through her thoughts. Fear. "You cannot win," she said, her voice a combination of clicks and chemical signals that June's translator converted to speech. "My soldiers are coming, millions of them. You are one injured creature. You will die here." June pulled the blade from his shoulder. It made a wet sound as it came free. Blood ran down his arm. He did not seem to notice. "Maybe," he said, "but you will die first." He moved. The Queen was fast, faster than anything her size should be. Her claws swept through the air where June had been standing. But he was not there anymore. He was beneath her guard, his blade carving a path through the softer sections of her underbelly. She screamed, a psychic shriek that echoed through the minds of every creature within range. In orbit, Pella clutched her head as the pain washed over her. On the fortress walls, hollow soldiers stumbled and fell. The Queen struck again and again. Her claws found their target. June took hits that should have killed him. A strike to the ribs, a slash across the back, another wound that added to the many already covering his body. He did not stop. He could not stop. Stopping was not something humans knew how to do. His blade found the gap in her armor where the head met the body. He drove it deep, severing the neural connections that controlled her psychic network. The Queen convulsed. Her screams became something else, something desperate and dying. June pulled out the blade and struck again, and again, and again. When it was over, the Queen lay still. Throughout the fortress and across the planet, 2 million hollow soldiers felt the connection to their Queen suddenly vanish. The ones closest to the fortress collapsed immediately, their minds overwhelmed by the psychic backlash. Those further away stumbled, confused and leaderless. In the tunnels below, Kim T and the others felt the change. The enemies who had been pressing against them suddenly stopped. Some fell to the ground. Others wandered aimlessly, making sounds that might have been confusion or grief. "She's down," Sora said, checking her instruments. "The psychic link is broken." Hana was already moving toward the Queen's chamber. "The captain needs medical attention." They found June sitting against the dead Queen's body. He was holding his side where the blood was flowing fastest. His face was pale but calm. "Report," he said when they entered. "Enemy forces are in disarray," Sora reported. "The ones within psychic range are non-functional. The outer forces are retreating. They're leaving the planet." June nodded slowly. "Casualties?" "None killed," Hana said as she began treating his wounds. "Multiple injuries across the team. You have the most severe damage. 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and blood loss that would have killed anyone else by now." "I'll live," June said. "You should be dead," Hana replied. "You've been fighting for 17 hours with wounds that should have stopped you in the first 10 minutes." June almost smiled. Earth didn't raise quitters. In orbit, Commander Orin watched the sensor readings with disbelief. The hollow forces were breaking. Their formations collapsed. Ships that had been stationed in orbit began retreating to deep space. "They're running," he whispered. "They're actually running." Ambassador Vel stood beside him, tears streaming down his blue face. "They did it, 5 of them. They actually did it." Pella was still recording. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "Note for the record," she said. 5 humans, 5 Deathworld creatures, 17 hours, 1 queen eliminated, approximately 50,000 enemy soldiers killed, 0 human casualties." She paused, trying to find words for what she had witnessed. "We asked them for help," she said finally. "We called them monsters. We feared them more than we feared the enemy. And they came anyway. They came and they fought and they bled for people they had never met, for a galaxy that called them nightmares." She looked out the observation window at the planet below. Somewhere down there, 5 wounded humans were helping each other out of a fortress filled with the dead. "I do not think I will ever understand them," Pella said softly, "but I think I am beginning to respect them." On the surface of Chorus Prime, Captain Park June leaned on Sergeant Kim T as they walked toward the extraction point. The sun was rising, the first light in 17 hours. "Think the Coalition will want our help again?" Kim T asked. June watched the sunrise. It looked different from Earth's sun. Smaller, redder, but still warm. "Probably," he said. "We should contact Command, tell them to send more teams." "More teams? You want to keep fighting?" June thought about the Coalition members he had met, the fear in their eyes, the desperation in their voices. They were not warriors. They were thinkers and builders and dreamers, and they were being slaughtered by an enemy they could not fight. "These people need help," he said simply. "That's what we do, we help." Kim T considered this. Then he laughed. "Earth's going to love this. First contact with aliens and we immediately start a war." "We didn't start it," June corrected. "We're just going to finish it." The transport ship descended to collect them. Above, the Coalition fleet waited in stunned silence. Below, a planet that had been lost was now free. The 17-hour war was over, but for humanity, the real work was just beginning. Word traveled fast across the galaxy. Within days, every species in the Coalition had heard the story. 5 humans, 17 hours, 1 impossible victory. At first, many refused to believe it. The Hollow were unstoppable. Everyone knew this. The idea that 5 soft-skinned creatures could destroy a queen and break an army of 2 million was simply too strange to accept. Then the recordings began to spread. Scientist Pella had captured everything. Every fight, every wound, every moment of horror and violence and impossible endurance. Coalition members watched the footage in silence. They saw Sergeant Kim T burning through waves of enemies without stopping. They saw Private Cho D running down scouts like a predator from ancient nightmares. They saw Lieutenant Yoon Hana treating wounds that should have killed, her gentle hand steady even as battle raged around her. And they saw Captain Park June walking through the Queen's fortress like death itself, taking injuries that would have ended any coalition soldier and simply continuing forward. The fear came first, it always did. Species that had been uncertain about the human alliance suddenly wanted nothing to do with Earth. They remembered the old warnings: Category 7 Deathworld, apex predators, creatures forged in suffering and violence. The footage seemed to confirm every terrible story. But then something changed. It started with small things. A coalition medical team found footage of Lieutenant Hana treating wounded Hollow prisoners, not killing them, treating them. When asked why, she had simply said, "They're not a threat anymore, now they're just patients." A cargo ship crew discovered that Sergeant Kim T had spent 3 hours after the battle helping to clear rubble. He had not been ordered to do it. He just saw work that needed doing and did it. An analyst found a recording of Private Cho D giving his rations to a group of rescued coalition prisoners. When asked if he would be hungry, he had shrugged and said, "I can skip a few meals." They can't. And everywhere the story of Captain June's final words to the dying queen spread. She had asked him why humans would fight and die for species they had never met. He had answered simply, "Because you needed help. Because that's what you do for people who are afraid. You help them." Slowly, very slowly, the fear began to transform into something else. Ambassador Vell stood before the Coalition Council for the second time in a month, but this time the atmosphere was different. The room was quiet, attentive, waiting. "The humans have sent additional forces," Vell reported. 12 more response units have arrived. They are requesting permission to begin liberation operations on other Hollow-occupied worlds. Commander Oren stepped forward. The old warrior had changed since Chorus Prime. Something in his eyes had shifted. The exhaustion was still there, but now it was joined by something brighter. "I have spoken with the human commanders," he said. "They do not want payment, they do not want territory, they do not want control of coalition space." He paused. "They want to help, that is all, they want to help." A delegate from the Mist species raised a tentacle. "Can we trust them? Their capacity for violence is beyond anything we have seen. What happens when the Hollow are defeated? Will they turn that violence on us?" Scientist Pella stood. She had spent every moment since Chorus Prime studying the human recordings, learning, understanding. "I cannot promise what the future holds," she said carefully. "No one can, but I can tell you what I have observed." She pulled up a final recording. It showed Sergeant Kim T sitting in the mess hall of Coalition Station 12. Around him sat a group of young coalition members from various species. Children who had lost their families to the Hollow, refugees with nowhere else to go. Kim T was teaching them a game. He held up his hand and made a fist. Then he opened it flat. Then he extended 2 fingers. The children watched, confused at first, then delighted as they began to understand. Rock, paper, scissors. The game made no tactical sense. It had no practical value. But the children were laughing. Really laughing, for perhaps the first time since the war began. And Kim T, the man who had killed 50,000 enemies with fire and fury, was laughing with them. "This is what they are," Pella said softly. "Yes, they are violent. Yes, they are terrifying, but they are also this: kind, gentle, capable of bringing joy to children who have known only suffering." She let the recording play for a moment longer. "They did not choose to be born on a death world. They did not choose to evolve as predators, but they have chosen what to do with the gifts their world gave them. They have chosen to protect, to help, to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." She turned back to the council. "I believe we can trust them," she said, "because I believe they have earned that trust." The vote was unanimous. Over the following months, human teams spread across the galaxy. They liberated world after world. The Hollow, who had never known defeat, learned what it meant to face creatures who simply refused to lose. One by one, the queens fell. One by one, the hive armies broke and fled. Captain Park June became something of a legend. The coalition offered him their highest military honor, a medal that had only been given 7 times in their history. He attended the ceremony in his simple uniform, his old wounds hidden beneath the fabric. When they placed the medal around his neck, he stood very still. The coalition leaders made speeches about bravery and sacrifice and heroism. June listened politely. He did not interrupt. When it was his turn to speak, he said only, "I was just doing my job. We all were. Earth sent us to help. That's what we did." Afterward, Ambassador Vell approached him. "Captain," Vell said, his blue skin flushing with emotion, "on behalf of the coalition, I must ask, what does Earth want in return for everything you have done? Name your price. We will find a way to pay it." June thought for a long moment. He looked around the grand hall at the hundreds of species gathered there, creatures of every shape and size and color, all of them looking at him with something that was no longer fear. "Friends," he said finally, "Earth has been alone for a very long time. We looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. We hoped. We dreamed. And when we finally reached space, we found a galaxy at war, a galaxy that needed help." He met Vell's eyes. "We don't want payment. We don't want territory. We just don't want to be alone anymore. We'd like to have friends, real friends, people we can trust and who can trust us." Vell's eyes filled with tears. "You want friendship, after we called you monsters, after we feared you more than the enemy that was killing us." "Fear is natural," June said. "You didn't know us. You only knew the stories, the warnings, the classifications in your databases." He almost smiled. "We're used to being the scary ones. It's fine. We just hope that now that you know us better, you'll see that we're not just monsters." "You are not monsters at all," Vell whispered. "You are heroes." June shook his head. "We're not heroes either. We're just people, different from you in some ways, similar in others. We get scared too, you know. We just don't let it stop us." In the corner of the hall, Sergeant Kim T was once again surrounded by children. More had gathered since the last time. They came from dozens of different species. Some had legs, some had tentacles, some floated in small gravity bubbles. All of them were watching Kim T demonstrate the proper technique for rock, paper, scissors. "The key," he was saying seriously, "is to be completely random. Don't think about it, just feel it." A small child with 6 arms raised one of them. "But how do you not think about it?" Kim T grinned. "That's the hard part. Sometimes the best strategy is no strategy at all. Sometimes you just have to trust yourself and go for it." Scientist Pella stood nearby, her recorder running as always. But she was not analyzing data anymore. She was simply watching. "Note for the record," she said quietly. "The Deathworlders came from a planet of violence and struggle. They evolved to survive the unsurvivable. They have within them the capacity for terrible destruction." She watched Kim T laugh as a child finally beat him in the game. The children cheered. Kim T pretended to be devastated. "But they also have this," Pella continued. "Warmth, kindness, joy. They fight like demons and love like angels. They are contradictions wrapped in skin that should not survive, and somehow, impossibly, they are exactly what this galaxy needed." She saved the recording and turned off her device. "Final observation," she said to no one. "I am glad they came, I am glad they stayed, and I am proud to call them friends." Outside the hall, the stars burned in the endless dark, but they no longer meant death. They meant hope. And somewhere among them, Earth spun on its axis, just as it had for billions of years. A small blue world covered in acid oceans and toxic oxygen. A world of fire and ice and endless struggle. A death world that had created something extraordinary. The humans had reached the stars, and the stars would never be the same. This was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. But for now, in a grand hall filled with creatures from 100 different worlds, a human soldier played games with children, and an alien scientist smiled, and an ambassador wept with gratitude. For now, that was enough. For now, that was everything.